We have had a great opportunity working with the medical college, preparing for this, and you're going to hear a lot as well about how 50 years ago the GMC worked with the medical college, particularly looking at talent innovation, how we could grow it in this region. And as a result of our ongoing discussions focusing on talent innovation, we're thrilled and honored to share that the GMC's initiative, the Commons, is going to be entering into a new 5-year partnership with the Medical College of Wisconsin with funding support of $100,000 from the Medical College. So thank you, John, and your staff. This partnership is going to support the Innovation Fellows Program. Basically, it's a follow-on program to the Skills Accelerator within the Commons. We select top students from the previous 2 cohorts, and they participate in a paid summer consultancy. So we have the students work with a number of companies like Briggs & Stratton, Manpower, and American Family Insurance, and now we're very pleased to add the Medical College of Wisconsin to this list over the next 5 years. On behalf of the GMC membership staff and our partners, we want to thank Dr. Raymond, Greg Wesley, and Mara Lord, and the entire medical team for entrusting us with yet another challenge for the next 50 years. And you're going to hear more about this partnership when we end the program and the Commons teams presents. So, and we also want you to take the work that we're talking about today, take it personal and take it home. We invite each of you to grab a children's book, which is at the table in the back near the registration area. Please take a book and share it with a young person who, to encourage them to think about entering medical careers. This is a gift, again, from the Medical College of Wisconsin to our members to pay this forward. So I want to thank our members and our wonderful team of staff that make the work possible, and I'll move on to the program. 50 years ago, the issues of shrinking public resources, growing a talent pipeline within the medical field, and increasing innovation created the urgent need for the GMC to commission the Heil Report. Those needs exist today within other sectors in our region. The work of the GMC still focuses on developing and retaining regional talent, growing innovation, and strengthening public resources. And today, thanks to the medical school and academic medical center in our region, including key partners such as the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin and Frederick Hospital, and thank you, Peggy Troy and Kathy Jacobson, for your leadership. Our community is physically and economically healthier, and we're looking at the challenges of the future to ensure that we meet all the needs of our community. Today's program, we're going to take you back 50 years. To a unique and unprecedented look at the challenges and visions and decisions made by the Greater Milwaukee Committee in the formation of the Medical College of Wisconsin. You're going to hear more about the history, but in the 60s, Milwaukee had a medical school that was part of Marquette University without paid instructors, that was struggling financially and was in danger of closing. Milwaukee also had a number of older, smaller hospitals that were facing impossible challenges to keep up with modern-day technology and medical practice. Access to quality health care was a major problem for the whole community. So in 1967, County Executive John Doyne made a plea to the GMC to conduct a study and recommend what would be best for our community to improve health care at that time and into the future. So we're going to bring John Doyne back to you today.
The first time it ever hit me was about 1937 or 1938. And I came out here with my uncle, who was a county board supervisor. His name was Supervisor Willard Lyons. He said to me, well, one day, kid, we'll have a great medical center here. I'm not sure I knew exactly what he meant, but it was okay with me.
Milwaukee County Executive John Doyne understood that an academic medical center improves the quality of health in a community and rallied the support of the Greater Milwaukee Committee, composed of the city's most prominent business and civic leaders, to thoroughly explore the need for and the city's ability to support an academic medical center. Industrialist Joseph Heil led the Blue Ribbon Committee that determined it was vital for Milwaukee's economy, future growth, and quality of life that an academic medical center be created. In 1967, the medical school separated from Marquette, making it a private, freestanding institution renamed the Medical College of Wisconsin. By the late 1970s, MCW moved to the Milwaukee Regional Medical Center campus. In the 1980s, both Froedtert Hospital and Children's Hospital of Wisconsin opened on the medical center campus. The dream of an academic medical center in Milwaukee had become a reality.
So the Heil Commission produced a report, which was a recommendation to the county to form what is now known as the Medical College of Wisconsin. Actually, current GMC member Chaz Mulcahy was a county supervisor at that time and played a very influential role in advancing this work. I don't know if Chaz is here today, but if you see him, you can let him know that we did give him a shout out. The GMC Executive Committee of 1967 included Carlton Wilson, the president of R.W. Baird and Company, chair of the GMC, Donald Albert, executive vice president of the Journal Company, Robert Deenan, president of Northwestern Mutual, Arnold Mason, vice president of Marshfield Fields, Robert Stevenson, chairman of Alice Chalmers, and Joseph Simpson, president of First Wisconsin National Bank. So today we're going to share a historic event for one of our early projects, which established the Foundation for Academic Medical Center. And we're going to talk about from its research and its education and healthcare delivery to developing talent and business startups, how the Medical College of Wisconsin is truly a world-class facility, and it's an honor to be a part of this legacy 50 years now. So what's been the impact since the GMC's Heil Commission issued its report? Well, it's my pleasure to welcome Rob Henken, president of the Wisconsin Policy Forum, in a few minutes to present the findings of their retrospective study that looks at the vision and the achievements that have been realized. We have a jam-packed program and invite you to review the one-pager at your tables for more information on the connections between the rest of our presenters and the Medical College. So John, Raymond, Corey, and the panelists, please feel free to come to the podium as Rob concludes his report. And as you hear these presentations, I want you to envision our predecessors from the 1960s deliberating one of our most critical issues for our community at large, and consider what challenges exist today that command our leadership with that same can-do attitude of our founders. So thank you, and let's welcome Rob to the podium.
Thank you very much, Julia. Thanks to all of you for being here this afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to share the results of our research. Before I get started, I just do want to recognize the two individuals who are the lead researchers on this project. So Susan Moser and Joe Pietrangelo, please stand up so everyone can see you. I get to stand up here and take all the credit, but it was actually Sue and Joe who did all of the hard work. What I'm going to do is take about 20 minutes to run through with you the highlights of about a 6-month research effort that we undertook to do this 50-year retrospective. It was 50 years ago, 1967, when the Heil Commission produced its report, and obviously a lot has happened since then. What we wanted to do was try to take a look back and sort of use that look back to also take a look forward. And so I'm going to be running through some slides that are going to summarize what we found. Please be aware that there is about a 50-page report that will be available on our website, publicpolicyforum.org. We haven't yet changed to wispolicyforum.org for our website. That's coming. But the full report, as well as a report brief, will be available to everybody as of 1:30 p.m. this afternoon. So let's get started. You heard the brief history already, so I'm not going to go into this. Again, the history of the Medical College of Wisconsin, of course, goes back well beyond 50 years, but we are taking this 50-year look, which was initiated, of course, with the GMC's Heil Report. For us as researchers, this was not the easiest project that we have ever undertaken for a variety of different reasons, not the least of which is that it is very difficult to think about what has happened with the Medical College of Wisconsin without thinking about what's happened on a broader level with the Milwaukee Regional Medical Center. So we had these two very important developments that took place at about the same time that were, of course, intimately connected with one another. The decision to indeed retain the academic medical center in our community, but to do so in tandem with a broader vision for a regional medical center. You can see on this slide the partners that were at the table to make this happen. We tried to the best of our ability in terms of our research question to focus only on MCW, but as you'll see throughout my presentation, it's hard to do that. Now, the other point of difficulty here was how do you get your arms around a question as big as what has been the impact of the Medical College of Wisconsin on our community? Now, we were fortunate in this respect because the Heil Commission really laid it out pretty clearly. From the Heil Commission's perspective, there were three main rationales for this community-wide imperative to retain an academic medical school in our region. One, of course, the most obvious one, is the education component. The fact that we wanted to have an institution in our community training tomorrow's physicians. But equally important, as this slide shows, were the community-wide need to ensure that we as a community had access to complex medical care. Think back to the late 1960s. Medicare and Medicaid were just coming into being. Advances in the field of medicine were just overwhelming. The leaders of our community said it's very important that we take steps to ensure that the citizens of Southeast Wisconsin have access to care for complex medical needs. The third, of course, is research. And here, what the Heil Commission spoke to was this entity not just driving medical research, but being the focal point of scientific leadership for our community. So there was a broader vision here in terms of our overall economy, in terms of our overall economic competitiveness, to really establish both the MCW and the MRMC as, again, this focal point of scientific leadership. The worst thing you can do when delivering a PowerPoint presentation is to state your conclusion before you've gone through all your slides, but I'm going to violate that cardinal rule for just a second. So when we look at a macro level and we think about what is MCW today, we see the statistics on this screen. We think about the growth. In 1967, there were 246 full-time faculty. As we stand here today, about 5,700. 20 clinical departments, 13 centers and institutes, et cetera. So obviously, we can take a look at these numbers and we can sort of reflect on so much that has occurred, and I think take great pride in that. But in terms of this report, and to quote directly from our research, we had some other questions to ask here. Again, there is little question that MCW has achieved the Heil Commission's basic objective of sustaining and strengthening medical education and research in Southeast Wisconsin. This was one of our conclusions. But, we ask, is it producing the community-wide benefits envisioned by the Commission and the leadership of the GMC? Is MCW doing enough to connect to the larger community and to benefit the region? And conversely, are the communities or are the region's elected and civic leaders doing all they should to maximize the benefit of this important community resource? So those were some of the questions that we tried to get at in terms of this research, and I'm now going to walk you through some of our findings. Let's start with education, one of the critical, of course, three legs of this triangle. Again, I'm going to trot out some numbers. Here we have some good quantitative data that we can share with you. When you take a look at the sheer number of enrollees, which is the blue line, and graduates, which is the orange line, look at the trend over the past 10 years, compare those numbers to the fact that in 1967 there were approximately 400 medical students and 89 graduates, you can see the growth. You can see the sheer number of physicians that MCW is producing for our physician pipeline here in our region. When you see this dip up over the last couple of years in the blue line, that's because of the openings of two new campuses, one in Wausau and one in Green Bay, which ultimately will have 75 enrollees apiece. So again, we're seeing growth in this area. So on a very basic level, in terms of that primary goal of churning out medical graduates, this goal certainly seems to be being accomplished. Some facts and figures you may not know. MCW is actually the 10th largest medical school by enrollment of the 147 in our nation. I know going into this, I had no idea that MCW was that high. 224 more enrollees at MCW than at the University of Wisconsin's School of Medicine and Public Health. So MCW is the largest also in the state of Wisconsin. Part of the equation here, of course, is churning out med school graduates, but another huge part of the equation in terms of producing doctors is ensuring that there are sufficient residencies and fellowships. And here the numbers are also impressive. When we think of the Medical College of Wisconsin affiliated hospitals, MICWA is the group led by the Medical College that actually works with the healthcare systems throughout the region on residencies and on fellowships. 945 residents enrolled in 150 programs in 2016. Enrollment up 13% over the past 5 years. Now that's important for a couple reasons. It's important for obvious reasons that without residencies and fellowships we're not going to produce practicing physicians and doctors. But when we think about nationally, when we think about where the need is, there was an imperative a few years ago by the American Medical Association that we needed to increase the number of medical school enrollees. That has largely been met over the past 4 or 5 years. But the bigger problem that has now arisen is access to sufficient numbers of residencies to complete the process. And so when we look at our region, MCW is playing a very important role with its affiliated hospital partners in terms of meeting that need. I would add that the consortium here in Southeast Wisconsin, led by MCW, is in the top 5 of all residency sponsoring institutions in the country, and actually recently received a national award for its exemplary residence and fellowship programs. Another reason why this is so important. Again, when the leaders 50 years ago talked about the need to retain a medical school, specifically in Southeast Wisconsin, this was about our physician pipeline here in this region. And we know, based on the data that is on the screen on this slide, that to the extent that we have students who are getting their both their graduate medical education and their medical school degrees in the state of Wisconsin, there's a much higher likelihood that they are going to stay in the state of Wisconsin to practice. So again, this is very important also in terms of both the public health of our region, but also arguably the economic health of our region to make sure that we are a region that has top high quality medical care. Many, when they think of MCW, just think about medical education. Again, I hearken back to the point by the Heil Commission, the vision to be the focal point of scientific leadership, and what's less well known is the number of PhD programs, 12, and master's programs, 8, as well as the approximately 360 students who are enrolled in those programs in any given year. So obviously from the numbers, a very important and impressive story to tell. This report, however, is not just about showing numbers and making the case that growth has occurred. It's also about identifying challenges going forward. And so clearly one challenge going forward is with regard to student diversity. What you're seeing on this slide is the current diversity, actually the 2016 medical college enrollees, broken down by by racial and ethnic diversity. If I were to compare that to the diversity of the region as a whole, African American population in the region is about 16%, Latino about 10%. So not quite meeting that. Now, is that a fair standard to which we ought to be holding MCW? I would argue it isn't. There is very fierce competition nationally for minority students seeking to go to medical school. Obviously, the pipeline of students who are interested in receiving a medical education is not fully in the control of MCW. But nonetheless, and this is a challenge that has been recognized by the medical college, something where going forward, efforts can and already are being undertaken to increase the diversity of the student body. In terms of another critical issue, while we are doing quite well when measured against national standards in terms of our physician to population ratio in the region, we have been identified by the federal government as having an urban primary care shortage in parts of the city of Milwaukee. Here too, MCW has a role to play in terms of tackling that problem going forward. And one of the things we observed is one of the real impressive things about the new campuses that have opened in Wausau and Green Bay is the strategies that are being undertaken to actually recruit students to attend those campuses. And so some of those same strategies potentially could be used effectively in Milwaukee to work on recruiting students who will end up addressing this urban primary care shortage. I want to turn now to the next leg in the triangle, which is complex medical care. Now, this one was a little bit more difficult for us. There's not a lot of quantitative data that I can show to you that's going to make a case as to the extent to which our region is enjoying better or worse access to complex medical care than other regions across the country. What we did lean on for this part of the analysis were national rankings. And so, of course, we have Froedtert Hospital, where MCW physicians provide almost all specialty care, a very highly ranked hospital, the only level 1 trauma center for adults in southeast Wisconsin. Quality indicators from U.S. News and World Report and other sources clearly point to Froedtert being a national leader in terms of specialty care and in terms of providing access to care for complex medical conditions. That's on the adult side. When we turn to the children's side, also an impressive story to tell here. The only level 1 surgery center and only level 1 trauma center for children in southeast Wisconsin. Similar high rankings from U.S. News and World Report and other national ratings institutions. When we think of the VA Medical Center, where MCW physicians provide almost all of the specialty care, not as many indicators that we have, but certainly those that we do have show a high level of access to high quality complex care. So again, a very nice story to tell. The anecdote that I often share is that I'm a native Bostonian, and we all know that people from the East Coast tend to be a little snobby and tend to look down at places like Milwaukee. I would tell you that there's no area where Bostonians have a bigger attitude than regarding medical care. If you're from Boston, you think you have access to the best medical care in the world, and I'm in no position to say whether you do or you don't, but having lived here now for 24 years and learning what I learned during the course of this research, I can tell you that I think it's not just flattery to say that we are fortunate in this region, that to the extent that we or loved ones are in need of care for complex medical conditions, we don't have to go across the country or across the world. We have lots of that access right here in our backyard, and that's somewhat unusual for a community our size. So with every piece of good news, of course, there's some bad news. And so there's a critical issue here in terms of complex care. There's a high cost to provide complex care. And this is sort of interwoven into the business model for the Medical College of Wisconsin. There's a lot more detail in our report. But suffice it to say that MCW is very reliant on professional fees that its doctors charge for providing specialty care. In terms of establishing these physician fees, one of the things that has to go into that thought process is the need to support not only the direct cost of the complex care, but also MCW's research and education missions. And so as we see a more and more competitive healthcare environment in this community, which may not be the worst thing in the world for all of you business leaders out there who like to see competition as a way to drive down cost, but just be aware that this is causing some challenges also for MCW and for its potential ability to compete to provide this complex medical care. So again, I'm not doing it justice. I'll get back to this a little bit in just a minute. There's more in the report, but a challenge going forward. The third leg of the triangle, research. And here, again, we have some more quantitative data that we can reflect upon. Uh-oh. There we go. Scared me for a second. MCW, of course, is the largest research institution in southeast Wisconsin, over $200 million per year of research expenditures by MCW. That's about 2/3 of the region's totals in terms of all of the colleges and universities in our region, and it's second largest in the state after UW. Clinical trials are a key piece of medical research and also a key aspect of this access to complex medical care. Here we've actually seen an increase. There's now 1,637 new clinical trials in 2016. That was about a 25% increase from the 1,224 in 2008. What this slide is showing you is the 10 departments at MCW with the greatest number of clinical trials over the past 10 years. You see that cancer is very well represented, and this is really an area where the number of clinical trials has taken off in recent years. These are all, again, very important in terms of attracting high-quality faculty, in terms of providing cutting-edge medical care. When we think about the economic impact of the research, there are several metrics we can look at. There are three on this slide. In terms of, first of all, the dark blue active licenses, we see the trend going upwards over the past decade. In terms of the number of cumulative startups that have emanated from MCW research, there's about an average of 1.6 new startups per year created as a result of MCW research. We're going to learn in a few minutes about one of those. And in terms of patents issued, we've seen that number grow over the course of the past decade as well. So again, impacts beyond just Watertown Plank Road, but also some economic impacts reverberating throughout the entire community. I mentioned the approximately $200 million per year of R&D expenditures. An issue there is that actually peaked in the 2011-2012 timeframe. Not entirely surprising, 2011 and 2012, we were the beneficiary of federal stimulus, i.e. ARA funding. But still sort of plateauing and staying level over the past couple of years, and there's actually a deeper issue here, and that is federal funding. And so when we look at the federal funding that has flowed to MCW over the past decade or so, we see here too, the dark blue bar is NIH funding, and that has gone down a little bit. And you may be thinking, well, that must be because NIH funding coming out of Washington is going down. It's staying about the same. And so I guess it's a mixed bag throughout the country. But clearly the fact that this federal funding is, and these are not numbers that are adjusted for inflation, that federal funding in 2016 is at about the level that it was in 2007 means that MCW needs to devote more of its internal resources to keep that overall spending at the $200 million per year. And that in turn plays into the issue that I raised previously about needing to set the physician fees and making sure that they have the resources to do that. So this too, an ongoing critical challenge going forward. So I'm going to conclude now. Again, I signaled the conclusion at the beginning. I'll, for the risk of repeating myself, say it again. But when we look at the basic elements here, in terms of what the Heil Commission's main arguments were to this community as to why we needed to retain a medical school, an academic medical center here, we take a look at these three issues: the physician pipeline, the access to complex care, the role that MCW as part of a regional medical center could play in ensuring that Southeast Wisconsin is where it needs to be in terms of scientific research and development. On its face, these objectives have certainly been largely fulfilled. That doesn't mean, however, that there are not challenges going forward, and I think that's one reason that Julia was so eager to be part of this, is to say not only to MCW's leadership, but to the community's leadership, that if you value the success of this institution, there are some issues that you need to start thinking about. And one is the interdependence of these three legs of the triangle. The fact that in order to attract high quality faculty, which is going to ensure that we get sufficient numbers of medical students, there needs to be a continuation of this commitment to R&D. And that's going to be more difficult in terms of, again, the impact it has on the physician fees and other issues. Each of these three are interconnected, and to the extent that one is being challenged, as we have now seen a challenge arise with regard to the federal research dollars, that could impact the others. It doesn't mean everything's going to come crashing down by any means, but it does mean that this is something that certainly, and I'm sure we'll hear more from Dr. Raymond, that MCW is concerned about going forward. As we look to the future as the Wisconsin Policy Forum, we think that there's real opportunity here. we acknowledge, and clearly when we think about the mission of MCW being fulfilled, we also have to think about the very real and very significant healthcare disparities in our region, with Milwaukee County being ranked number 71 out of 72 in terms of county health rankings, with regard to the fact that our poorest zip codes do not look good when measured against a range of various health indicators. Does that lay at the doorstep of MCW? Of course not. But we think there's real opportunity here. We think, and again, it's not just we think, this is something that's happening at the medical college, and in fact, the community is now one of its key planks, community engagement. But additional community engagement regarding research, regarding attacking these health disparities, regarding addressing this issue of the urban primary care pipeline. That's not only going to be beneficial to our community, but I think it's also going to help make this community aware of this institution in its backyard that really could be providing a lot more help in terms of addressing these very critical issues. So in closing, again, I would show you the triangle, show you community in the middle, and argue to you that while clearly there is lots to be proud of, there are challenges going forward, and those challenges are not just challenges, again, of the MCW leadership and board, but challenges of this community, its civic leadership, and its elected leaders. So thank you very much.
What is life without health? Health gives us vitality and happiness, flourishing families, productive communities, and a better future. Good health is our most valuable possession, and nothing has contributed more to improving health than academic medicine. The pioneer of healthcare in our nation, where science, medicine, and knowledge unite to change our world. Academic medical centers are the home of academic medicine. At the heart is a university with a medical school, where research, from the most fundamental cell-based science probing the smallest microbes to data-driven population health studies, fuse with educating the next generation, world-class patient care, and a commitment to community health. To ask why, pursue new knowledge, and find the best possible answers. It is this combination of curiosity, dedication, and knowledge that does the most good for the most people. Like setting the quality and practice standards for patient care nationwide, training the workforce for tomorrow's healthcare and scientific discovery, evaluating the next promising treatments for patients through clinical trials, treating our nation's most vulnerable citizens who face challenges beyond the capacity of most hospitals, providing the majority of complex care, such as organ transplants, and treating rare cancers. All this despite the fact that only 5% of the nation's hospitals are part of academic medical centers. The world's best and brightest are drawn to academic medicine, seeking to work side by side with fellow thought leaders to accelerate new, life-changing knowledge. Communities with academic medical centers not only benefit from world-class care, they also receive an infusion of cultural and philosophical diversity, economic vitality in the form of billions of dollars in job creation and investments, and a partner committed to the health and vibrancy of the community. Nothing does as much for health as academic medicine. It has the unique ability to advance knowledge, drive discovery, improve lives, and rewrite our future.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, GMC. Imagine for a moment what our lives, our region, would be like without the vision of the GMC in 1967, without academic medicine, Without MCW and without our partners on the Milwaukee Regional Medical Center campus and the Zablocki VA. Imagine Lucas, a car accident leaving him paraplegic, now able to use his hands because Dr. Shaker Kirpod discovered a stem cell treatment to regenerate neuronal connections in Lucas' spinal cord. Imagine Thomas, born without a trachea, now able to eat and breathe after Dr. John Densmore innovatively shaped a trachea for him out of esophageal tissue. Imagine Nail, a Milwaukee student growing up in the 53206 zip code, participating in an MCW pipeline program and eventually leading him to medical school. Imagine Dan, diagnosed with multiple myeloma and told that there was no cure, now treated at Freighter and hopeful because of his father-in-law's decades of research at MCW. These are our neighbors, our friends, our partners. Their stories have been rewritten because of academic medicine, MCW, and our health system partners. Now imagine how the fabric of our region would be if leaders like you had not stepped up to renew a commitment to have MCW in our community. This slide shows some of the impact that MCW's had on our region. Well, if you could see the slide, it talks about a significant economic impact and enablement impact on the vitality of the region. And some of the other points that have already been made by Rob. If we go to the next slide. It's difficult to imagine our region without the vision set forth by the Heil Commission because we do enjoy the highest levels of healthcare quality in the nation. Some examples of this excellence that we bring to the region with our health system partners are shown on this slide. Academic medicine elevates the care in the region, the state, and the nation. Sustaining the excellent health care that we enjoy here in our own backyard requires the community to value the benefits and holistic impact that academic medicine brings. We provide care to the sickest patients. We drive advancements in medicine. And we train the next generation of doctors as part of the overall health economy. MCW and our partners have educated or trained 50% of the practicing physicians in Wisconsin, even those that are preeminent in some of the health systems with which we compete. I know that you have a vested interest in providing healthcare value to your employees and for your families, from routine primary care visits to the time when you need an expert to ensure that you receive the best care possible. And we at MCW do appreciate that the cost of care is something that's on everyone's mind. It's critical that we consider the total cost of care rather than simply the unit cost of care if we're going to give a fair treatment to the value equation. That's where we can achieve community-wide value. MCW and our hospital partners do continually seek to deliver the greatest value to our consumers. Some of our efforts include philanthropy, seeking operational efficiencies with hospital partners, and moving ambulatory procedures off of the main campus chassis into lower cost, more accessible settings. I assure you that we're sharply focused on all three components of the healthcare value equation: value, quality, and cost. With only 147 academic medical centers across the nation, access to its rare and unique advantages must be valued. MCW and our partners are the home team. We're dedicated to health and the vitality of our community right here in our own backyard. And we can provide the kind of care that only an academic medical center can give. For example, Freighter and Children's Hospital of Wisconsin were 2 of only 35 U.S. hospitals designated as Ebola treatment centers in late 2014. The vitality of our community depends upon the capacity to innovate and our ability to attract, retain, and develop talent. Top physicians and scientists are attracted to our region because of our investment in research, education, specialty care, and our community. Innovation is essential for our vitality. Academic medicine is also a job generator for our state. This slide depicts all of the jobs generated by MCW and the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine. Another key point is that for every $1 million invested in academic research, 7 jobs are created, and most of those are in the supply chain, not on our campus. Dr. Sherry Zhang will join our reactor panel today as she represents the intersection of investing in talent, providing the resources and autonomy for innovation, and the capacity to spin off in a thriving economy. As a community, I believe that we've exceeded the vision of the Heil Commission. MCW's faculty, staff, students, and patients are grateful for their foresight, and more so for the dedication that followed 1967 through Project Merit, which raised funds to support the infrastructure on the Milwaukee Regional Medical Center campus, and indeed to save the viability of the Medical College of Wisconsin when we spun out from Marquette. Project Merit was composed of the Greater Milwaukee Committee members Carlton Winston, R.W. Baird, David Carley, MCW, and Lloyd Smith of A.O. Smith. We are grateful to our health system partners, particularly Froedtert Children's and the Zablocki VA Medical Center, for sharing our vision and values as an academic medical center. We're also grateful to the GMC, to you, our region's leaders, for continuing to support the value and the vitality of academic medicine. However, we cannot achieve better health for all without making a serious commitment to addressing the health disparities and equity in our region, as Rob alluded to in terms of our community engagement mission. We should strive for nothing less than the elimination of health disparities in our community. This map depicts physician shortage areas in Milwaukee County, which is outlined in black. The green depicts areas of mental health provider shortages. Light blue shows primary care shortages, and the teal shows shortages in both areas. These shortages exist in zip codes such as 53206, where more than 75,000 families are living at 200% of the federal poverty level or lower, and this is the highest concentration in the state. Racine and Waukesha counties also have around 12,000 families at this level. MCW is investing in health equity through our Institute for Health and Equity and through access to health care and clinical trials through our Cancer Center, through which we conduct more cancer clinical trials than anyone else in the state. And through our Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin endowment, we invest in partnerships to address pressing health care needs in the region, such as coordinating EMS and health system responses to emergencies. We've also invested $20 million in behavioral health initiatives across the state and $50 million in cancer research in communities. Closer to home, we've invested more than $38.7 million in 114 projects in Milwaukee County. And we plan to build capacity through partnerships to address health disparities and socioeconomic determinants of health in under-resourced neighborhoods through our Center for Flourishing Lives initiative. As you can see from this slide, the socioeconomic determinants of health have a more profound influence on health of communities than genes, behaviors, or health care. MCW can and will do some of this work, but we need to address the challenge through partnerships. Others already are there and doing excellent work. The Health Department, the Milwaukee Healthcare Partnership, Near West Side Partners, Marquette, UWM are key institutions in this effort. And health equity isn't just about access to a doctor, it's about environment, employment, education, housing, transportation, food, and social support. We need a community commitment to find solutions for those in need. Another goal is to strengthen the pipeline of doctors who connect to and reflect the communities in which they're needed most, as was pointed out in the Wisconsin Policy Forum's report. We're grateful that all the academic institutions in Southeast Wisconsin are committed to STEM and to ensuring that underrepresented and science and medicine students have an opportunity to fulfill their dreams. MCW is a national leader in education innovation, and we've made a significant impact on underserved communities outside of the region. Now we need to create pipelines that students can see and strive for, and that lead individuals to practice in the communities where they're needed most. This requires an effort directed at K through 12, university, medical school residencies, and all the way through physician practice. MCW is committed to strengthening these pipelines in partnership and looks to our area schools and universities to join us. We hope that the foundations and supporters also join us to align those pipeline programs from middle school to medical school. Now I'm pleased to share with you the story of Nail, a medical student at MCW.
I live in 53206. a very impoverished area in Milwaukee, but I went to school in the suburb, Whitefish Bay. My interest really started as early as 6th grade, where we had a grandparents' day, and I noticed how many minority students didn't have grandparents around. A lot of my white colleagues had healthy grandparents, and it really made me just understand the difference in health care and differences in accessibility and quality of care that exist.
This is Niall, a young man who searched for a way to serve his community. But before he was even born, inspired thinking at the Medical College of Wisconsin was paving the way for new opportunities.
When we look at our physician workforce, we find that 12% of our physician population were underrepresented minority. So we need to make sure that our physician workforce represents the society that they're going to take care of. The pipeline program started in 1989, and it was through the effort of trying to diversify our student body.
Rhodes is a 7-week program for students that are underrepresented in medicine and or research. And the students in the program are learning what it is to be in a scientific environment, really understanding what the research process is, and then getting access and exposure to an opportunity to serve their communities and really changing the face of medicine.
For me, Rhodes was great. It allowed me to see that there were like-minded individuals, people who looked like me, who had my same skin color, passionate about science and about medicine.
It's quite rewarding when you look at our youth making a decision that this is what I want for my life, and this is how I want to serve my community. It is what we do at MCW. We are here for our community.
Seeing Niall succeed on his journey is a great testament to what we can do here at MCW. When we have a student who started here as a high school student and 5 years later comes in as a medical student, shows the rest of this community and the rest of the country and the world that we can deliver on that promise of creating a pipeline.
You know, I see him really helping people out. He's always been that type of person. I just see greatness for him.
Today we're having our final graduation luncheon for all of the summer programs through the Office of Student Affairs Diversity.
Niall Scoggins.
So I definitely want to be a physician. I hope to incorporate research into my role as a physician, and I definitely want to be involved in my community. So I think with all the advice and resources, I feel well prepared for medical school.
I saw an education was the only way for you to survive in 53206.
As I asked you to imagine our community without MCW and our partners, I also tried to imagine our community without the Greater Milwaukee Committee. I can't imagine a community without you, the visionary leaders of our community, our champions, our supporters. As MCW celebrates our 125th year of existence this year, I submit that our accomplishments and impact wouldn't be possible without the Greater Milwaukee Committee and without you. So on behalf of MCW, I offer a heartfelt thank you to the Greater Milwaukee Committee and to everyone in the room. Thank you.
So we're going to cut quickly across the field and throw open to our panelists our first question. Obviously, the leadership back at the GMC 50 years ago was a visionary group of leaders, some of whose organizations are represented here today, so we appreciate that continuity. But if the Heil Commission were here today and they were talking to this room, what challenges would they ask us to undertake? What issues would they be asking us to tackle today? And Mary Ellen, as Representative of Bayard, why don't we start with you, given Bayard's work and focus here 50 years ago?
Thanks, Corey, and again, congratulations to Dr. Raymond and the entire team. It's clearly a critical gem and resource to our community. I think the biggest challenge is really the financial model, is that it's a three-legged stool, equally balanced, critically important, and we've got to continue to be creative about how we finance this, because there's a cost to education and educating that future pipeline. There's a cost to the research, and it can't entirely be borne by the clinical part of the franchise and the clinical partners. We have great primary hospital partners. They have clearly distinguished themselves. So the answer is going to be lots of different things. not the least of which is philanthropy, collaboration with partners like Marquette with the new engineering, biomedical engineering program, and finding those ways with our partners to focus and align the resources so that we can continue to maximize. I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
John, you touch a lot of different parts of the community. What do you think the Heil Commission would task us with today?
You know, first of all, Dr. Raymond, congratulations to you and the entire medical college for all the wonderful things that you've done for this community. I was sort of reflecting, Corey, the first time I ever set foot on that campus was when I was a high school student in this community, and a bunch of people recruited youngsters from the city of Milwaukee to take us out, to spend a summer out there, to encourage us to consider careers in medicine. Dr. Raymond, obviously, my organic chemistry told me that that was not my calling. But sort of rolling it forward a few decades, when my buddy Mike Bolger called me up and asked me to go on the board of the Medical College of Wisconsin, it was a real pleasure to be associated with that organization, and I think what you're doing is absolutely marvelous. I do think that what Rob identified are things that our community needs to really be focused on, like laser beam. And I commend the institute that you're developing because I think the gulf between the disparities in healthcare is a function of what people observe. So for me, when I sat in the medical college boardroom, as proud as I was, there was a context for what we were doing as opposed to when I was a 17-year-old orderly sitting out on that campus. So I think if there's going to be a bridge in the triangle that Rob mentioned around community, the pace of engagement and having a consistent respect for not only the brilliant academics out at the medical college, but the community that they serve is going to be a real key to population health.
Sherry, what do you think?
Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor and a pleasure for me to witness and celebrate and also aspire for our future as a community. And my experience with Marquette, so I graduated at Marquette in 2007, and soon after I got my first position at MCW, started a wonderfully rewarding and also challenging journey until early this year. So I think after I got this invitation, I started to look back of the whole journey I took. And I think I was so lucky that we have created such an ecosystem of education and knowledge creation that I didn't need to go far to Harvard Medical School to pursue my postdoc education. I can got just as fulfilling, also challenging to further develop my career right here in Milwaukee, thanks to the existence of MCW. And the critical thinking I learned at Marquette, and the attitude I learned to be feeling empowered to be the difference, and really helped me to prepare myself to develop into a scientist that I always wished to be from when I was a little girl. And at the college, I think there are a lot of gaps I encountered. I was studying under a mentorship of a great co-founder of the Obesity Society, Dr. Ahmed Kasiba. I always wanted to use the technology I know to apply to the true problems we have, obesity, metabolic syndrome, which is affecting 60% of our society people. But there's a gaps, because I was interested in linking the genes, not just studying the genes, but also the environment. So there's something called epigenomics. I don't want to bore everybody today, but I was like, that makes sense to link, to study that missing link between these two. But there weren't any technologies or faculty members at that time equipped with that system. So I identified that gap and I applied internally with my two mentors who had nothing to do with epigenetics. They were like, what? What's epi? And I explained the significance of that. They gave me allocated a small grant internally and shipped me to different places. I went to Mayo Clinic, I went to Cleveland clinics, I went to Texas Biomed to learn all the state-of-the-art technologies, bring it back to the MCW. Because we have one of the best, nation's biggest family-based genetics obesity cohort. So we have a great treasure that I can just bring the technology and address my question. So I don't know whether that answer your question. I think it's important to create umbrella so we can have talents to continue their advancement of their career, to learn the know-hows, to create the new knowledge, to contribute to our society. And being able to, I'm a mother of 11 years old, so I gave birth to my son on the same year where I graduated at Marquette and then started an MCW job. The fact that I don't have to sacrifice my family dream and be able to do everything as you witnessed is a great thing. I think it's thanks to all the ecosystem we created. I really want to help identify the gaps that I experienced, and we can fill that so more people like me can pursue their dreams here.
Mike, as you think about what the Heil Commission would charge us to do today, what would be top of the list?
Well, I just want to congratulate John and the Medical College for the tremendous impact you've made as the leader of the institution that actually spun out the Medical College. I'm a very proud parent of what it's become. Yeah. I think, both Rob and John and others have alluded to the fact of the disparities that are in our community. And we've kind of highlighted the health disparities today, but they're all interrelated with the educational and economic disparities. And I think the Heil Commission, we're here today, they would challenge us to find a way to overcome those. And obviously, I think that they would ask us to do that through partnership, because not one of us can solve all of the major issues we have, but working together we can. And so I think hopefully, as we think about the future of Milwaukee and how we can all be a part of making it a better future, we have to address all the disparities that we see within our inner city.
So why don't we talk a little bit more about that, Mike, in the couple minutes that we have remaining. Who do you think ought to be the other partners who are involved in the table at addressing the challenges around the disparities? What role specifically do you think MCW should play? What role specifically do you think those partners should play? Well,
I mean, again, I mentioned three of the major disparities: the health, educational, and economic. And so obviously MCW, Freighter, Children's Hospital, the Regional Medical Center, they can play a huge role in some of the health disparities and addressing those. Obviously, the educational institutions, not only higher ed, but then working with the K through 12, some of the pipeline programs that John had highlighted, having us to work together to really address some of those, the educational attainment of our city, so everyone has the same opportunity. And finally, the economic. We have to find ways to give opportunities to people within our inner city to be successful and be able to prosper. And again, a lot of that is the business community. It's organizations like the GMC that can really, help, everyone in the city have an opportunity to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Mary Ellen, from your perspective, having chaired so many of the organizations in our community that exist, including MCW's board for so ably, who do you think those partners ought to be at the table, and what specifically ought they to be doing?
Well, without calling specific, individual organizations out, I think the key is we can't duplicate. Everybody is constrained to some extent with resources, and figure out a way to focus it and collaborate. And that's where, that takes unselfish leaders who can look forward, be creative, whether on the health disparity issue and the whole delivery system. Do we need to get creative and look at loan forgiveness programs? The college has already created the 2 new campuses with 3-year programs versus 4-year to allow kids to come through and get their medical degrees in 3 years versus 4, and cut the cost in doing so. Maybe we need to take it one step further and go after some targeted loan forgiveness programs in certain areas and certain zip codes. Greg Wesley and others are piloting a new program that we'll be announcing more details that are being formulated as we speak, where the college and our partners will get even more active within the community in terms of bringing resources directly to those in greatest need. So I think it's anybody and everybody, and there's so much that we can do together versus compete on, and that's where it's just critically important that we do it together. The two engineering programs that I was referring to before, where Marquette and Medical College together joined forces, that took a lot of courage and an unselfish leadership team on both sides to say we can do so much more together on the biomedical engineering. That's just a micro example of what can happen when people look at possibilities.
John, we trained you so well at the medical college about being a board member that you went on to chair the board at Aurora. So what do you think
That's a real setup, Corey, my man.
So who do you think the partners are, and what kinds of things do you think they ought to be doing?
I love Corey. I guess the one thing I want to sort of second and third is this need for pace and acceleration in leadership. And as sort of has been alluded to here, nobody can sort of stir the ocean by themselves. And so I commend the medical college for being forward-looking with others. And I think in our community, it is a question of pace. One of the things that I was particularly pleased to see in the report, Rob, was underscoring the need for action as opposed to merely describing the challenge. So I just think this whole notion of the medical college and others taking the lead and saying collaboration in attacking these issues, and we're all in it together, and we're all expected to participate, is really, I think, the forward-looking part of what I would hope would happen in the community.
Sherry is our entrepreneur at the table. So what do you think? Who else ought to be involved in dealing with some of the challenges that exist in our community? Who are some of those partners, and what kinds of things should they be doing?
Yeah, so my company is a proud graduate of a great program called Accelerator Program, and then Joe Kirgis was there. So we have, a fabulous setup just starting to emerge as an entrepreneurial ecosystem components. And I think the reason I love being a professor, that's kind of always my dream job as a girl. It's so hard for me to leave that identity behind when I started to get too busy and want to focus on my company, GenoPalette, as you know, is linking people's genes with the food we enjoy. The reason I had to take the leap is because I think I identify a gap where the knowledge that we created in the lab are not necessarily being applied to daily use as they can be. So I want to formulate that vehicle. And when I was doing that, it was pretty hard to find the right intelligence, wisdom, and resources to help me build that vehicle. I was lucky that I was also very driven to, I was very curious, and then why can't I do that? Who can help with that? And luckily, locally, we have Generator, we have some other organizations that really have the right vision. And I think we should amplify that. I think we should, as a community, not just a singular autonomy of institutions, but through a little bit of my limited experience, I graduated from Marquette and then learned the critical thinking, and then I applied that into the real practice, solve the problem, identify a gap, and then form a commercial vehicle so I can, help people. And I think if we can really amplify that pipeline and make it easier for talents to be able to do that in a very free way, I wish we have a faculty track for entrepreneurial, that way I don't have to leave the MCW, officially, but I think that will be very helpful, and I think it will eventually generate a lot of revenues or talent pools and retain them locally and strengthen the system that you created 50 years ago.
Well, certainly the tech transfer opportunity here, as you're demonstrating as a spin-out from MCW, is huge, and I hope we all have an appreciation for the phenomenal vision that the Heil Commission showed 50 years ago, and to John Raymond and his team and his predecessors for their execution on that. We all have a community that we can be proud of, and certainly when we look at the range of resources that we have available to us through all of these partnerships and the relationships, I think some of the comments from the panelists are spot on about the need to accelerate, the need for unselfish leadership, for greater alignment, and 50 years from now, people sitting in this room can look back at how much more we were able to do to accelerate it. In the interest of time, I'm going to call the ball on our panel, and hope you will join me in thanking them. As a member of the MCW board, I would be remiss if I also didn't acknowledge and thank our partners, Peggy Choi and Kathy Jacobson, for their phenomenal leadership. You heard in the report and you saw in the slides how much is going on out here on campus that's being led by these phenomenal clinical leaders. So I personally wanted to acknowledge them and thank them for their partnership. Certainly the panelists and other MCW leaders will be around to take some of the burning questions I know that you all had, but this time I'd like to welcome up the leadership team from the Commons Group, and I think they're going to make a couple closing remarks before we all head back to our busy days. Thank you.
Thanks, Elmer, and everybody. Thanks for having us here today. As many of you know, the Commons is a talent development and retention platform that focuses on fostering the entrepreneurial mindset among college students. Through strong partnerships with corporate, startup, and civic communities in southeastern Wisconsin and beyond, we've interacted with over 1,000 students since starting in 2014. As a result of our efforts, over 90% of Commons students are making key business connections, and over 80% of them are more likely to seek employment here in Wisconsin. Joe?
Earlier, Julia mentioned the Innovation Fellows program, which we piloted last summer and are growing even further this summer. We designed the program to be kind of the next step for the top students that we've worked with over this past year. We select these fellows to join us for a very intense, full-time paid gig during the summer as innovation consultants for a number of large companies and smaller startups. They work on critical path projects throughout the summer, and it's a ton of fun. We roll out the red carpet for them, have them getting them meeting local leaders, touring area companies, and connecting with the community. We basically created this thing to be the most insane internship that we could think of, and I think we delivered on that last summer and are ready for more this coming summer. Michael and I are thrilled to be up here for two reasons. One is that I'm wearing a tie and he's not. If anyone knows us, this is weird and kind of a big deal. So we'll get some pictures later that I am fancier than this guy. So the other reason is that we're just thrilled to be announcing this partnership between MCW and the Commons. We're getting into a 5-year health-related innovation challenge partnership for our fellows during the summers for the next 5 years, which is super cool. This partnership will kick off this summer with a design thinking workshop between MCW and GMC leadership. The workshop will define the project that the Innovation Fellows will work on over the summer. And by mid-August of this year, we'll be ready to present the deliverables back to all of this leadership. So please watch your inbox for more information to get involved with all of this.
So to wrap up, I think it's just awesome to think about over 50 years ago, the GMC stepped up to the challenge to ensure that through the creation of the Medical College of Wisconsin, that a region could develop medical talent and innovation. Today, we're ready to step up to that challenge again through this partnership with the Commons. Thanks again to the Medical College of Wisconsin and all of our corporate partners who are committed to developing and keeping innovative talent here in Wisconsin. I'll turn it over to David to wrap up. Thanks.
All right, everyone did a great job. We're right on time. So Corey, thank you very much. Panelists, thank you. Rob, Dr. Raymond, Joe and Michael. And I want to thank everyone for coming and getting an update on the Medical College. There's no question it's a very, very important institution, especially when you're ill. So May 14th is the next meeting, and we look forward to seeing all of you then. Thank you.